This is an interesting camera for sports photography. If you've been watching the channel, I recently got the Sony a7RV, and I usually do a lot of portraits, street photography and sports photography, which I actually use this camera for some nice tennis photography, and kind of want to speak about my experience in case you're wondering if this is a camera for you when it comes down to a little bit more action shots. Of course, the most obvious take about this camera will be the megapixels. Having 61 megapixels in this camera is really something that becomes very beneficial when it comes down to sports photography. One of the reasons why I think it's a phenomenal thing to have in the Sony a7RV whenever I'm doing sports photography for myself is that, to be honest, having to repurpose a little bit of the composition due to the extra megapixels is very convenient, because not always can you have the right moment for the right focal range whenever you're trying to capture those, action shots. As much as I believe in my skills, I also know that sometimes the moments just kind of come as organically as they can, and sometimes you don't have the right focal range. So being able to recompose my shot in post to be able to get different types of shots that I wish I would have gone because of the focal range allows me to do that a lot easier with this camera, because it's very convenient having 61 megapixels for the photos that I need to take, especially because sometimes I want to get a little bit of the environment, but then maybe I want to crop in a little bit more just to get that detail shot that I want. So of course, having extra megapixels is not end all be all for when it comes down to, photography or cameras, but having that extra wiggle room, especially because in action shots, I can't always plan what's going to happen. I can kind of know what's about to happen due to me playing tennis my whole life, and I can kind of guess a little bit what's going to be developed into the point, but being able to repurposing some, photos in post whenever I need to recrop or something, it's always nice, and something that I've truly enjoyed with this camera already. So yeah, the megapixels in this camera is just great for photos, and of course the video in this camera is still very good. I can use a little bit of the 8K, especially if I'm not kind of pandering a little bit back and forth, because the rolling shutter is not going to be the best when it comes down to this camera for the 8K, but it lets me do a little bit of repurposing for, social media if I want to do vertical or, a little bit of horizontal, depending on what I need for my kind of needs. But as well, having a little bit of the extra, 4K with a 24 frames per second, less crop in the 60 frames per second than my a7 IV, allows me to do a little nice hybrid shooting, especially because I have the little switch that my a7 IV had that I'm so glad that they've been keeping it going with the, Sony line of cameras. So it's a really great hybrid shooter to go back and forth for photo and video, capture nice little moments with the, megapixels that I can. If I'm shooting maybe 35 millimeters for video and switch really quick, I know I can just repurpose content a lot easier. Which is, well, getting the frames per second for photos, capturing just kind of burst mode with this has been really great to be able to ensure that I just don't miss a moment. I was able to do it with my a7 IV, don't get me wrong, it was great and everything, but this one has been very nice to have as an option, and I'm able to capture a lot of good moments without missing a beat. So like I said, repurposing it for the megapixels and for fast frame rates, it's pretty nice. So yeah, that's pretty great already for sports photography for myself. So in case you're wanting to do that for a little bit of a hybrid shooting, probably would be a good option for you. And the updated IBIS and autofocus when it comes down to this camera has been really great to do for a lot of handheld shots that I tend to do. Since I like to shoot a lot of handheld when it comes down to sports photography, mainly due to not having to be too far away with a bigger, telephoto range, like how some people might need to with soccer or something of the sort, having to use a bigger lens, it's really nice to be able to just go ahead and have good IBIS to do handheld, whether it's slower shutter or anything of that, to just kind of have a little bit of different frame styles when it comes out to my photos. It's quite handy. And I'm also secure that the IBIS with the nice updated autofocus is going to work so nicely together that I can do slower shutter, I can do handheld video, and be able to get every little shot that I need from that camera body because of the updates. So it is really nice to have. Which as well, if you like to use more telephoto lenses, it's really nice pairing it up with the IBIS of this camera to be able to use it more in the telephoto range. I use it with my 35 to 150 in the 150 range, since it doesn't have any vibration composition, but also with my 50 to 300 that tends to have it a little bit more, that allows me to just get sharper shots without having to focus on, making sure that the shutter speed might be higher than I need to or anything like that, where the IBIS of this camera paired up with the lens just works perfectly to be able to capture the moment and get some good sharpness and everything I need to in the more telephoto range. So that's a really great addition with this new updated IBIS that they added to this camera. So something that really helps out for me since I have to shoot more in the telephoto range whenever it comes down to sports photography. Which, speaking of lenses, I paired it up with fast aperture lenses like the f2 to 2.8 with a 35 to 150, as well with a slower aperture like the 4.5 to 6.3 50 to 300, which allow me to use them both, which I wanted to use them mainly more to kind of get more compression and everything, as well to see how the higher ISO range might, work out with this camera. Granted, it was during the daylight, so sorry if you're wanting to know how it would perform in low light whenever it comes down to a slower aperture lens like this. But for myself, I just wanted to see how I could freeze motion, have higher ISO if needed be with a 50 to 300, but as well get that nice, lower, faster aperture with the 35 to 150, which with these two lenses, it was just great to pair up because having nice stability with the IBIS and everything to capture everything I needed for all this focal range was just great. And I knew that it was going to perform well. So it was an easy choice to just test out these lenses because those are the ones that I use for sports photography. So it's quite nice. And honestly, my most favorite feature that is so beneficial for me when it comes down to sports photography is the back screen. The back screen has been so useful for me because I love that I can flip up whenever I want to do some video and photo in one go kind of style if I'm shooting in horizontal mode, but I can also do the flip out screen if I really need to, if I'm trying to get a little bit of those lower angles and I want to keep it in the vertical mode. This just allows me to just honestly repurpose the type of photos that I need to a lot faster and a lot easier if I need to shoot vertical or horizontal depending on my needs. And it's one of the best features that I've encountered when it comes down to my needs, when it comes down to sports photography and videography, because I'm able to shoot a lot of video and a lot of photos in one mode really fast without having to have the screen flipped out and then having to do everything a lot faster that something could, possibly break. It just feels more comfortable for me just to be out here like this if I need to. And if I really do need to like flip it out for whatever reasons, for like maybe a lower shot that I need to do, portrait mode style, I have my bases covered. But yeah, all the features in the Sony a7RV that we talked about today has really made it really great for sports photography, especially for tennis photography that I tend to do myself a lot more of. I tend to use this a lot for my, social media game for my tennis academy and everything like that, but also because I genuinely love the sport of tennis. So whenever I go to the US Open or any of the other pro tournaments that I can capture the best athletes in the world, well, now bringing this one, I know I'm gonna be covered when it comes down to that. I'll be taking it with me to the US Open this year to really use it and see how I can use those extra megapixels to get closer to the action, to make it almost feel like I was one of the actually hired photographers from the ATP to be able to capture the US Open. But maybe one year they might consider me, That's why we got to blow up this channel. So they're like, you know what? We'll let them go ahead and take some photos of the pros, because I've taking some proud photos that I think are really great from the previous years. And I want to do a lot more when it comes down to using this camera, pairing it up with my 50 to 300, especially because I know I can get more range. And now having the nice little extra megapixels, I know I can get even more. But yeah, it'll be great to use it more for sports photography, and my initial kind of usage that I've been doing it for the last couple of days since owning this camera has been very fun, very useful for everything that I need to with the screen, the IBIS, the shutters, the megapixels and everything. So I thought I would share it with you guys in case you're looking to get this camera for more sports photography, especially because their summer trade-in program, at least here in the US, doesn't end until I think either end of August or end of September. So in case you're wondering to get this camera, get some money off, might be for you, might be not. But as always, any gear that I use and upgrade to is in the description down below. So if you want to support the channel with some of my affiliate links at no extra cost to you, I would appreciate you go checking it out and, see what you want to get, what you don't want to get, and life moves on. But let me know down in the comments down below what you think about this camera, the performance for sports photography. What do you use for your sports photography or anything of fast action shots that you're trying to use and capture? Do you use something a lot faster? Maybe you can afford the Sony a9 III to get that global shutter. Maybe you have something different. I would love to know your thoughts down below, so make sure to go ahead and leave a comment right there. If you don't, I'll know. Not really, but yeah, hopefully you do. But with all that said and done, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to like and subscribe, share this video with a friend. I'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya.